Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode no,
No,
105.
no,
That bodes well for this episode.
not
105
five.
of Eat, Drink, Write, an Urban Fantasy Whiteboard.
Wow.
Today we're going to be talking more about magical systems. This was a recommended topic from our patron, Nicole.
Yes.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you. Thank you.
But before we get into that, how was your week?
1 week closer to graduation. So,
Yeah.
doing, I don't know if it's a yay. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. So yeah, just busy. And I'm trying to get a lot of writing done on my thesis and,
Not the
I got
kind
to
of
go.
writing you want to do.
No, but I am doing a lot of that too, because it is a really nice shift, for me mentally to work on something that is not just my thesis, because
Mm-hmm.
that's just stressful and my head feels very tired and
Mm-hmm.
clogged, I guess, with scientific stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've written 5 paragraphs that all say the same iteration of one thing or another. It's just like the same information over and over and over, because it's all that my thesis is about. So it's getting a little old, but I'll get there. I want to have it done by the 28th of March. So
All right, you got a goal.
yeah, I
Point.
do. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I've got some good progress on it. So, but the creative writing has been going really well too. So I started this book, I picked it back up at 40,000 words, and now it's at like 50, I think,
Nice.
or
Very nice.
52, I think. So making some headway on that one, and it's, I think, potentially good for my sanity. So
I think so. I think so. You can channel your insanity.
yeah.
Yeah.
So no, it's been a decent week. I'm just tired and very stressed. I've the nightmares about like giving my defense talk has started. So
Oh God. I'm
I don't,
sorry.
it's okay. I get to sleep fine. Like that's not a problem. But like I wake up at like 6 and then I'm just up because I'm like, oh well, I have a
Mm-hmm.
defense to give or whatever. And then I start thinking about all this stuff that I have to do, and it's just a little stressful. So
Hmm.
that has been my week, and I think it will continue to be for the next 8 or so.
Yeah. Well, I went to the orthopedic doctor to check
Oh,
on my foot.
how's that?
And he says it still looks about the same. The
Hmm.
bone, it's just taken a long time to heal. But he
Yeah,
said, I mean, the good news is I'm not feeling the pain anymore
right. I was
and
gonna
I'm
ask.
walking a lot better now. So he said,
Good.
the only limitations is, let my body tell me what I can do. So your dad and I went walking this morning.
Oh,
So
good.
that was so exciting. I was very excited to get out and start doing something again. I just feel like a
Yes.
lump lately. So, I mean, I made it one time around the track. It was 7 minutes. Woohoo. And
That's
he kept
good.
he kept walking, but my foot by then was it
Hurting a bit.
swelled up and it hurt. And I
Yeah.
was limping again by the time I was done, but I was out there moving. And so I feel much better about that.
That's awesome. Good. Good for
Yeah.
you.
And then it's court this week, so I'm
Yeah,
in court. So I'm tired. I
of
just
course.
just got done with court like 15 minutes ago. So,
Yeah,
but wanted to get this done so that it can be posted on time. So,
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah,
what are
yeah, yeah.
you eating and drinking?
Well, tonight is going to be a pretty chill date night because it's been
A
two
date
months.
night.
Yeah, it's been 2 months
Oh,
since we got engaged. So we're celebrating 2 month engagement because we're lesbians and we celebrate every little thing, it's how we do.
It's
So
a thing.
it is a thing. So we are gonna celebrate that. We're probably gonna order a pizza from one of our favorite pizza places here and, maybe watch a movie or play a board game. Actually, this one right behind me, it's called Root.
Oh,
Um, so
neat.
yeah, we might play a board game or something. We'll see how we're feeling. We're both tired. We went up to North Carolina this past weekend to visit her family.
Hmm.
And we did a bunch of stuff. So, we're both tired.
Drinking, playing games, same
Yeah,
stuff you do when
yeah.
you come to visit this my side of the family.
Yes, exactly.
Heaven help
Um,
us if both sides of the family ever get together. It's going to be a
oh,
rocking
there's
time.
listen, gallons of alcohol will go missing from the world.
I kind of look forward to that.
Yeah. Um, and then I'm drinking just tea because I wanted a caffeine boost. So it's my normal
Mm.
English breakfast tea with cream and sugar and all that good stuff. So,
Well, I am drinking a concoction.
oh, and an amalgamation.
Yeah, it's kind of a dirty martini, but the
Oh,
olives are stuffed with peppers, and my mouth is watering just talking about it. I've
yum.
already had half
Yeah.
a glass of this, but I didn't want it to be too strong because I end up not being able to talk very well, and that's, the opposite of what we're supposed to be doing in the podcast. So
Right,
I
right.
added some soda water, sparkling,
Oh, okay.
whatever it's called, club soda.
Club soda. Yeah.
So it's very good. I love the flavor of the juice from these olives that are stuffed with the peppers.
Hmm.
Oh, fabulous. They're just fabulous.
I love stuffed olives in
Oh
general, no
my God.
matter like
Any kind
peppers
of
sound
stuffing.
great. Yeah.
Mhm. They're really cool looking. You can't really see
Yeah.
and the
Oh,
people
she's
that
reaching into her cup
can you see? Oh, can
a
you?
little bit. Oh,
It looks
weird.
like a worm in it, but
Yeah,
it's
kind of
whatever
like a
that kind of,
tadpole.
it does
Yeah.
look like a tadpole.
Yeah.
I don't
Weird.
know what that type of pepper is, but it's very, very good.
Is it like a peppercini or like a banana
Maybe
pepper? Hmm.
it
Okay.
came that way. It came that way.
We're writers, y'all. All of us here.
I feel like they don't believe us anymore the way we talk sometimes.
Yeah. No, my excuse on that front is I'm a writer, not a speaker. You
There you
know,
go. I
I
like
like
it.
to talk. That doesn't mean I'm good at
Hmm.
it.
Hmm.
So, what are
We
y'all
do
doing for
like to talk.
food? We do.
Oh, Daddy's making chicken, baked chicken, and green beans and a salad, I think.
Oh, nice.
He cooks a lot for us, but usually during the week of court, he cooks every meal because I'm just invested in court.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but it
Fair
smells
enough.
good. I can smell it.
Nice. Sounds lovely.
It'll be ready whenever we get done.
Yeah. All right. Tell me about magical systems.
Yeah. So we did an episode on magical systems before, but it's such
Yes.
a huge, huge topic. I feel like we could do hundreds of episodes just on magical systems.
Yeah, and I would absolutely love to. I'm pretty sure I could talk about this topic for days on end. It's I think my favorite part of fantasy and urban fantasy is
Mhm.
figuring out how to create these magical systems and the cool nuances and even reading about them. I
Mhm.
think learning about new magical systems and just the creativity that you can get with them is
Mhm.
very fun. I did pull the episode that we did our magical systems
Oh,
on.
good. I
It was
forgot to
episode,
look
yeah, it was episode 10. So long time
early
ago,
on. Okay.
very long time ago. Also, did you know that episode 10, has like 1,000 views on our YouTube?
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
it's crazy. I was looking at it earlier. There's so many views on that specific episode. All our other ones have like a decent, few here and there, but like that one has over 1,000.
Wow, that's crazy. I mean, it is
Yeah.
a topic that all writers that do fantasy and urban fantasy need to know about. And even regular books that aren't set in other worlds still have world building parts that go into it.
Yeah.
You might be building a fake city within our real world because you don't want it to be set in a particular,
Right.
place. But that's wow. I'm
Yeah. Right.
impressed with that.
Yeah.
So this episode is actually going to deal with the different ways that you can work your magic in the novel.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nicole's example was like, you can use wands or your hands or staves, and she wanted to learn more about other ways that you can actually work the magic, not just necessarily setting up the magical system itself, but how do you manipulate the magic? How does the magic work?
Right. Exactly.
So, yeah. So yeah, it was Nicole, who is our very newest patron, who
Yes.
gave us this suggestion.
Yeah. And thank you so much for this. We love getting suggestions.
Definitely.
So if you guys have anything that you guys want to learn about or want to hear us talk about, believe me, we can talk about anything for a long time. So send them in. We would love to. We would love to talk about it.
By episode 105, I think they know that now.
That's fair.
Yeah, this is actually one of my favorite things to do too. I love the world building part of writing. It's so exciting. I mean, it's limitless. You're at that point where you could, your imagination is
the limit. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically in fantasy, whether it's high fantasy, urban fantasy, low fantasy, you have the magical system is important because it's magic that makes your world go round. That is the whole point of the genre.
Right.
It's not an afterthought. It's not just oh, this is a cool thing that happens on the side. It is a super important literary device that shapes your writing. It shapes your characters. It shapes your entire novel.
Right. Yeah.
Magic and how it works is going to dictate how your characters act.
Absolutely. I mean, like, sorry to interrupt
That's
you,
okay.
but I think, like you said, magic is what makes the world go round. And that's obviously going to influence every character's, thoughts and decisions, especially if magic is involved in their lives. Whether it's, been there for their entire lives or something that they discover within your novel. So I think it's just important to think about character reactions as well, if you're using magical systems within your novel.
And that reminds me of a series I just watched a little while ago. I don't remember what it was called, but it was about witches that were the whole premise was kind of like an underground railroad to get witches out of the United States and into Mexico because they were persecuted so badly here in the United States.
Yeah.
And it was very interesting. I had a point. I really don't know what it is.
How much of that drink have you had?
Well, 3/4 of it now, but it still shouldn't be enough for me to have just forgotten what I was talking about mid-sentence.
Fair.
At any rate, it was a good show, and it was a neat twist on the magic, because it was, well, a lot of magic systems are hidden from the rest of the world, but in this particular magical system, everybody knew about it. And so you had the people, the majority of the quote majority hated magic. And so it was this prejudice against magic users and that kind of thing. So the whole magical system, it dictated how all the characters, even the bystanders, the townsfolk, treated the idea of magic. It was central to the entire story.
Yeah.
So generally, you have to decide what kind of magical system you're going to have for your novel. And then this will tell you how you can make that magic work.
Yeah.
So like high or hard magic is a novel where the magic has strict rules. It's got a strict set of parameters. And that is explained within the story so that your readers understand exactly what your characters can and cannot do, like Harry Potter.
Yeah, and that's exactly the example I was thinking of when you mentioned this. And I think we probably talked about it in episode 10. Because I think that was something that we discussed very briefly, was this idea of high or hard magic and lower soft magic. And the world, Harry Potter does have very specific rules that J.K. Rowling did explain throughout the story across books, so that the reader already knows, and that there are expectations that come with the use of magic within that novel.
Yeah, definitely.
And my first thought was, oh well, that's gonna limit the writer from being able to use like surprises or shocking magic or whatever. But I also don't think that's necessarily true. I think there's a really good way to write hard magic and still be able to get across like very surprising nuances of that magical system.
I think so too. And then low or soft magic is more of a nebulous, readers don't really know where the magic comes from or how it's used, what the nature of it is, what the limitations are, like Gandalf and Lord of the Rings. You just know he's magic. You don't really know what he does or how he does it. There's no rules that the reader is told about how that works.
Definitely. And extended beyond Gandalf, I think the elven magic also, it would be, all of the magic in that world is very much just like soft magic.
And yet it's a high fantasy.
Correct. Yeah.
So it gets very confusing.
Yeah, right.
So I started off by talking about hard magic, and I had so much on it, I don't even get to low magic in this one. So that might be a topic for another day.
Right.
So in a hard magic world, you have to be able to explain the system. So that's where it can get really fun and how you can make the magic work. Yeah. So Harry Potter.
Yes.
They use wands. I still remember I love that scene with Severus Snape, and he does the duel for the children with that
Yeah.
ridiculous character. I can't remember what his name was anymore, but I just loved
Oh,
that
me neither.
scene. It was
Yeah,
such a great scene. But yeah, with wands.
definitely. Yeah. And not only that, but like if you think about the wands in that world specifically, they use bits of magical creatures or items
Oh
within those
yeah.
wands.
Yeah.
So and then also she added the tidbit of the wand chooses the wizard. So that's another piece of the magical system. And I think it's just so interesting to do that kind of thing with items and with magical items or magical parts of
Mm-hmm.
creatures. And
Mm-hmm.
it goes, simply beyond wizards have to use wands. It's
Right.
more like, it's a tool for magic, but it also has, a sort of depth to it.
And it's a
Um,
unique tool specific to a particular wizard, which,
right.
they bond. And I mean, that, like you said, that's really good.
It's pretty cool, and I think that's something to keep in mind if you want to use objects or items in your magical system. Think about how they came to be. Like, what makes them magical? Are they just inherently magical? Do they use pieces of other magical creatures, or does it use magical blood or whatever? How do they fit into your system and the history of your knowledge? And that can add a huge depth to your story and your magical system.
I agree.
Yeah.
Another example of hard magic, I think, is the magicians. They
Yeah.
use those intricate,
The hand
hand
motions.
motions to
Yeah.
cast the spell.
Super good show. That's a really great example, I think, of hard magic, because it is, oh, they have to use these hand motions in order to get magic across.
Yeah, it won't
Um,
work without the proper hand movement.
right, exactly.
And so they have to practice and practice and practice until they can get it done right. All importantly with the how they're holding their fingers and whatnot.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
and
super
those
great.
were also books, which I haven't read, but
Yeah, I
the
haven't read
TV
them
show
either.
was awesome, I thought.
Yeah.
Because you start watching that series and it kind of feels like, oh, it's going to be, you know, kind of light and fun, and it is not. I mean,
It's very dark.
but there are parts of it, it's just so well
It's
done. And I
I would
wonder
get
if the book is written that way. It's
right.
really wonderful the way the show came across.
Yeah, like you, I haven't read the book, so I can't speak to the theme or the tone of it, but the show it comes across as, like you said, very fantastical,
Mm-hmm.
almost like whimsical in some parts, and
Yes,
but then it turns into like it's a very dark show, but
it is super dark.
it gets some dark comedy across as well. So it's
Yeah,
very interesting. Yeah, but
yeah.
the magic system in it, is also very interesting. It lends to that dark tone like the magical
Mm-hmm.
system itself does. So very
Mm-hmm.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, and also in that one, as an example of it being hard magic, you have the hedge witches that aren't allowed to be taught
Mm-hmm.
properly, and so they're trying to teach themselves. So that leads to a whole different set of rules and the
Right.
costs, which we talk about later, of not doing it within the rules, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Wheel of Time series, that
Yeah.
series
Right.
is absolutely amazing. It's a high fantasy as well. And those magic users touch the one source, which is
Yeah.
like, I envision it as being a pool of magic that they just can reach for within their bodies,
Huh.
and they shape it into their magic. Like in a battle, they would touch this one source and then use that magic as a weapon against the attacking forces.
Interesting. Okay.
But you need not just the rules, you've got to have limitations, and not just limitations, but consequences of breaking those limitations.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm glad you're bringing this up because, I think limitations are super important to magic and stories. Otherwise your characters could be viewed as overpowered depending on how you write them. There might not be much of a fight if there's no limitation to
Yeah.
magic, especially because you can do so many fantastical things with magic, especially if there's no limitations. And you might catch yourself without much conflict, which is
Yeah. It would be too easy.
yeah,
Yeah.
which is something that you certainly don't want, as you're writing a novel, you want conflict
Hmm.
to pop up, and limitations and consequences of those limitations are very useful for that.
Yeah, definitely. Like the limitations in the Wheel of Time, any man who touches the one source goes mad because
Mm,
the male half of the one source has been tainted
right.
in the past. And so any man who touches it is doomed to go mad. There's no cure that they know of, that kind of thing.
Wow. Yeah.
And so in that book, one of the main characters is a male who is able to tap into the one source. And so we're all dreading, well, we know he's going to go mad at some point, you know?
Right. Right.
So that was the limitation there. And I just watched Nosferatu,
Yeah.
and it was written by Joe Hill, who I believe is Stephen King's son.
Oh,
Yeah. And which he took the name Joe Hill because he didn't want to be connected with his dad, you know, but sorry, I just connected you. Interesting show. I watched the TV show. I have not read the book yet, but the use of magic has a physical or mental cost to the person using that magic.
right.
So the guy, Nosferatu himself, he lost his soul,
Oh,
which is about the steepest thing that you can pay.
wow. Yeah.
But he doesn't realize, because once it's gone, he doesn't care. He doesn't,
Yeah.
yeah. And one character developed a stutter whenever she used it. And that actually, the more she used it, the worse it got until she started having seizures.
Yikes.
And the main character, her eye would turn red and she would get these horrible headaches and her eye would bleed.
Oh God.
So in that story, the stutter character learned that inflicting pain takes away that limitation.
Oh,
So she started actually burning herself with
that's
cigarettes
aggressive. Okay.
until the pain got so bad on herself, and then she could use her magic without consequence, the stuttering or the seizures. But
Yeah.
another person used killing other people to pay the
Yeah.
price because he
Yeah.
didn't want
Yeah.
to hurt himself. He was very vain and, you know,
Very selfish, kind of. Yeah.
selfish. And so he would just kill other people. And that was the price. And that worked.
And that worked. Wow, what an interesting system. I've not watched that or read it. Is it, you said you watched it?
Yes. And
The show.
apparently the show concluded everything that Joe Hill had written in his book, but they left it wide open in the show to go on, but it got canceled, which I'm very
Oh, I
upset
see.
about. It was really good.
Yeah, what an interesting magical system though. And that, like you, I'm glad you brought it up because it is such a super good balancing, like checks and balance
Mm-hmm.
system for magic to,
Mm-hmm.
you know, create these conflicts and limitations and consequences
Yeah,
and
I
stuff.
thought that was very well done as to have that limitation and those consequences, or that was pretty cool, I thought.
Yeah.
Um, so what are some fun ideas for how to work magic in your novel?
Yeah.
Well, back to Nosferatu,
Yeah.
the character that had the stutter,
Hmm.
her magic was a bag of Scrabble tiles. It was this purple velvet looking bag,
Yeah.
and she would ask a question and then reach into the bag, which her arm would go farther. It was almost like a bag of,
Oh, like a bag of holding or
a
like a
bag of
haversack.
holding. And then she'd pull out the Scrabble tiles and have to unscramble them to figure out what the tiles would say.
Yeah.
But it also had its own downside, is that it left it to her to figure out how to unscramble the words. So she got a clue at one point and she thought it was smitten. And she's like, what does smitten mean? What does that mean? And she told the main character, does smitten mean anything to you? Because I asked this. And she's like, oh my God, it's not smitten, it's mittens, which was the name of a cat of this little girl who got taken by the bad guy.
Oh,
And
wow.
so, you know, that also was a limitation of the tiles.
Right.
But
I love that.
I had never heard of magical Scrabble tiles before.
No. Well, and then that's something that I was going to say is like that is such an interesting and creative way to pull in modern world items. You know, you don't see people running around with wands a lot of the time, you know,
Yeah.
obviously in
Yeah.
Harry Potter, it's like a hidden magical world kind of thing. So you wouldn't necessarily see that. But Scrabble tiles is like in everyday, I mean, somebody, I don't carry around Scrabble tiles, but it wouldn't necessarily be that strange to see them in
Mhm.
today's day and age. Like, oh, maybe that's their favorite game. They're carrying it off to
Yeah.
a friend's house,
Yeah, they must be
but
going to a party where they're going to play Scrabble.
right. And especially if it was in a bag, like you can carry around a bag of just Scrabble tiles. And if you pull them out, then maybe it's a little weird, but it's still just Scrabble tiles. And I think that's a really great example of using just general objects in our everyday world as a conduit for magic and
Yeah, that
magical.
would definitely be more for urban fantasy than high fantasy.
Yeah,
Because
yeah. But
in
I
a
think
high
it was
fantasy world, they might not know what Scrabble is, but it could be a game in that world.
similar to Scrabble.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which our readers live in our world, so
Hmm.
they would make that connection.
Right. Absolutely. Cool.
Um, I have to bring up Dungeons and Dragons.
Do it. Do it. All
That
right. All right.
that system of magic, well, it's evolved
So
over
much.
so many years, and it
Yeah.
has gained depth, and it's taken on a life of its own.
Yeah.
But it has so many different ways to cast magic. Like wizards learn magic from old books,
Yeah.
and warlocks create contracts with unknown entities like the fae or demons or gods or whatever.
Yeah.
Sorcerers are born with magic in their blood. Clerics and paladins channel the wills of gods into their beings and are able to cast the magic because of their gods.
Right.
Druids draw the magic from nature.
Yep. Yep.
And all of these multiple magical systems co-work in the same world.
Yeah, they coexist
They
and are
coexist.
able to.
That's the much better word than co-work.
I knew what you meant. I'm sure our listeners probably maybe know what we mean when
Maybe
we say
I don't know
things.
that people ever know what I mean. But how cool is that? So not only does D&D have, they don't just have this one magical system.
Right. There's several.
There are several based on
Right.
what kind of character it is, and we could do the same thing in our books with different cultures having different magic bases and
Yes.
magic abilities.
Right.
I actually remember playing a game when I was young. My brother was always the dungeon master. And I feel like that if you were, I don't remember if it was a mage or whatever, but you had a spell, but once you read it and used it, it was gone until you relearned it.
Gotcha. Yeah.
You had to relearn it. And the Dragonlance series that I talk about was actually based on early D&D lore. It was a D&D, it was a Dungeons and Dragons series.
Right.
And then D&D was actually influenced by The Dying Earth by Jack Vance.
Yeah.
And in that world, there were a limited number of spells remaining. And once cast, those spells are forgotten, forcing the magic user to have to relearn the spell, which I think is where that came from what I remember playing, because it was it was like the original D&D. That's
a
long time ago.
Yeah.
And so you had to actually relearn the spell. And it's what a neat magical system that, okay, yeah, you're still having spells. It's a spell, that's common, but the spells are so rare and so difficult to use. And if you use it, it's gone for a set amount of time,
right,
until you have time to relearn it. That adds a huge depth to your book, where then you have to strategize when to use this. Should I hold it? Okay, we could die here, but we might really need this spell later if we get to where we're, and so that creates conflict as well, or tension. I've got this spell, but can we do it without this spell?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And you're right. And that's a really good example of that's a strange limitation to have. That limitation is built into the magical system. And the fact that it's about, memory and how, that is so interesting, the different aspects that you can apply to creating a magical system. I think it's just very neat.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when we played whatever character it was I was playing, you would read the spell and it would like disappear off of the scroll.
Oh, cool.
And you would have no memory of it. You mean you would think, roses are red, violets are blue. Oh, I can remember that.
Yeah.
But as you read them, it's gone, and it's gone from your mind as well. How
Right.
weird is that?
That is very neat. Very cool. Very cool concept.
The Lightbringer series, which
Yeah.
I haven't read, but I was reading about it today. I have found so many things that I need to go and read after doing this research.
Yeah.
So the Black Prism is the first one, and
Okay.
its magical system is all dictated by shades of light.
Oh, cool.
So governments and magical law are influenced by the concept of the light spectrum.
Yeah.
And they have this thing called chromaturgy.
Yeah. That sounds like it would be a word. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a concept that allows people to channel the light into magic. And while most individuals can only use one spectrum of light, there are a select number who can use all of the colors, known as prisms.
Yeah.
And then the light creates a material called luxin, which can be solid or liquid, and it's used for magical spells.
Neat. Cool.
And sometimes the individuals attempting to channel luxin, they channel it through their body, which leads to grotesque results.
I
mean, talk about a limitation.
Yeah, that sounds like okay, well, now I got to go and read these books.
I know, right?
Which I don't have time for at the moment.
I know.
That sounds amazing. What a great concept. And I think it really highlights, like, you can use anything in the world around you. Just think about, literally anything.
Yeah, I had never thought of light magic.
Right. Yeah,
like
no.
The light. And the idea of, you can only use this end of the spectrum of the light.
Right.
These people are frowned upon because they're only able to use this, whereas we can use this up here. The purple light is the best,
Right.
And then you've got
super neat
crazy people, these people that can use the myriad, which is a typical thing in high fantasy, that you have, oh, this is the character who can do out of the ordinary.
Right.
You've got these rules, but this character has something special, or, and they don't know it because they were adopted, that's a predictable line, but the light magic is a good twist on that.
Very cool. That is very cool. I want to go read those books now.
I do too. And then the Magic Bites series by Alona Andrews.
Yeah.
It's words. Words have the power. Well,
yes. I mean, some
people. For some people, yeah. And so I think words are something that when we talk about magic, that's what people think. You speak a spell, or you write down a spell, or, it's all about the words.
Yeah.
But she actually had words of power, right?
Words of power. Yes.
Words of power. And they weren't just known to people, and she had to learn them. And there was a consequence for her using the words of power because she wasn't trained in how to use them. And so she had physical consequences when she tried to use the words of power.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And, you mentioning Magic Bites, of course, makes me think of Mercy, because, very big names in the urban fantasy world. And just like the set of rules and the limitations that exist in that world as well. The werewolves, their change is a set standard, with one or two explained exceptions. And, I don't think that they have any like tools that they use for changing. I think they just are able to change. But then if you look at witches, they do have tools that they use to do their magic. And so do vampires. Vampires live on blood, and they also have all of these magical items that they use in order to gain power and control over other things.
And there's rules for each one of those things. So it is also a hard magic world.
Right. Yeah.
So then I started thinking of, well, what else could we use to cast magic? Because I think that's what Nicole was wanting to know, what other ideas do we have? So I thought, well, what about music magic?
Definitely.
So you could have bards. I mean, that's a D&D thing, but
sure.
what if magical instruments can be used to cast spells? And I'm sure
Yeah.
there's lots of books out there with music, like a violin being a magical violin or whatever.
Right, right.
Or what if it's your voice and the pitch of your voice that works to cast the magic? Like think of sirens who are
Right.
supposed to sing and lure men to their deaths. That's music magic.
Definitely. I also immediately thought of it could be its own written form of magic. It's with sheet music.
I love that
Um,
idea.
because I can read sheet music and I can write sheet music and I can just imagine using all of that, all of the symbols for it, the different rhythms, the different notations that we can get across by writing music, and using that as a form of magic, and then compounded if you actually play that music.
Yeah, that is amazing. And to me, written music is magic anyway, because it's way over my head. I cannot read music, but yeah, how
Yeah.
amazing is that? And you think with music magic, think about the type of people who tend to be famous for music. They're travelers, they're
Hmm.
famous. So in a historical fantasy or a high fantasy, they might be the ones that also gather information, which perhaps they put into music and it becomes magic. The information that
Definitely.
they gather, that's a lot to do with music magic, I
It
think.
makes me think of like performance, and I feel like there's I've potentially heard of this concept before, but like gaining the approval of a large audience, that
Mm-hmm.
energy from an audience could be used to gain power.
I
um
love that.
yeah.
Almost like, we've heard of the stories where gods have to be worshiped. That's how they get their power. Maybe
Right.
it would be the same thing with a musician. That's
Yeah.
how they get their power, is by the
Yeah, exactly.
adoration of their um, customers or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure.
Interesting. And then I thought elemental magic, like
Of course.
the Avatar, the Last
Avatar: The Last
Airbender.
Airbender.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That you're a big fan of those. I've seen
Yep.
some of them, but
Yeah.
um, they actually bend and use each of the elements. They have the magic to control those particular elements, and then you have the main character, Aang,
Aang, yes.
who could use all of them. But
Yeah.
his limitations are that he's super young, for one thing, he's a kid,
Right.
and he doesn't know how to handle all of them.
Yeah. Well, since you brought that show up, that is a great example of a magical system that is just phenomenal. They use martial arts to wield the power of the elements. And so each nation has a different martial arts style that is befitting of whatever element they're using. So air nomads have a very different style of fighting and a way of moving in order to manipulate air currents and that kind of stuff. And it's super, super cool magical system in that world.
I mean, and if you think about each of the elements, how much you could do with each of those cultures that use the particular element, and how that would make their culture grow, and what kind of
And they
things.
do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
And it's
so
very
cool.
cool.
Yeah. Or maybe if you're going to do elemental magic, maybe it's very common to have people that can do the four elements, earth, air,
Fire,
fire,
water.
and water. Wow. But what about the fifth element that's supposedly out there, spirit?
Yeah.
What if that's a super rare thing, and maybe it's a dangerous thing?
Yeah, for sure.
And how would you use that? Because with fire, you have fire, you produce fire, fire either comes out of your fingers, or you hold it in your hand, or you can light things with telekinesis on fire. That kind of
Yeah.
same with air. Maybe you can push things, but spirit, what does that mean?
Well, it's interesting because now that you're saying that, the book that I'm working on right now has somebody that can manipulate spiritual energy. And I'm not going to go too
Oh.
into depth on that because I think it's really cool and I would like to keep it
Mm-hmm.
for myself. So, but it is really neat. And I have very much enjoyed playing with that aspect of my magical system because it is interesting way to write something.
That
So
is interesting. I'm thinking there was a book. Where was that? It might be one I wrote.
oh
I think it was. It was Theron, which I haven't finished that one yet. It's a high
yeah.
fantasy, and he absorbs magic, which is not the way
Hmm.
that magic is supposed to be worked. You absorb
Yeah.
it, it kind of goes through you, and you manipulate it, and it comes out of you and does whatever you're supposed to do. He
Right.
has no mechanism for it to come out of him.
Oh.
And so he just absorbed and absorbed and absorbed and absorbed, and it created issues. And
Issues. I don't
but
remember that book. I read it when I was 14.
yeah, I don't know that you ever read that one, because
I
it
did. I did.
did
I
you
did. Yeah.
had Triala in it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I haven't read that in forever. I
Good
need to
one.
finish that one.
Yeah, you do.
That
Yeah, you
that
do.
was a good one. But yeah, that so, and I wouldn't say that that was spirit, but he had the problem of, like Nicole was talking about, how do you use it? Well, he didn't know how to
He didn't
use
have a
it.
way
He
to.
didn't
Yeah.
have a way to. Yeah. Um, maybe you can put the limitations on an elemental magic. Maybe you have to actually touch that element, like you have to touch the earth, or have to carry around a bag of dirt in your pocket in
Yeah.
order to use it, which makes
Right.
me think of, remember Magneto and X-Men, where
Yeah.
he could manipulate metal.
Metal.
He
Yeah.
was magnetic, but he had to have metal to be able
Close
to
by.
use it. And
Yeah.
so of course
Yeah.
they put him in prison in a plastic cell.
Right.
But yeah, so
Yeah.
that would
Super
be a
cool.
great limitation on an elemental. I have to carry
Definitely.
around a little baggie of water in order to be
Yep.
prepared to cast my spell.
Yeah.
um Weather magic.
Yeah.
There are tons of books out there on weather
On weather
magic,
magic. Yeah.
and I haven't read any of these, and they sound fabulous. So a Wizard of Earthsea, where magic is a central part of life on this continent of Earthsea. And Earthsea's residents are grateful for any mages who have particular control over the wind and weather.
Yeah.
And so this character, the main character, discovers that he possesses weather magic when he accidentally conjures up a fog to scare off this threatening sea raiders that were coming to their little island.
Cool.
His mentor was famous for taming earthquakes,
Oh,
which I thought was interesting.
that is really cool.
And he cautions this main character against letting his emotions funnel into it, especially with weather,
Right.
which you can imagine, tornadoes and whatnot. And the little blurb said, unfortunately, this is a lesson he has to learn for himself. So that, kind of tells you
A little bit about what happened
yeah.
with that mentor character.
And then the book, The Drowning Eyes, there are wind speakers in that
Okay.
book, and
Yeah.
their eyes that were stone. And it said it's almost a reverse siren, where they draw the wind from the sails of pirating dragon ships to protect their island from pillaging.
Oh,
But
cool.
when the dragon ships attack the wind speaker temple and steal the magical icon that's the source of their powers, then
Right.
suddenly that, of course, opens up this whole story that this
Right.
book is apparently about.
Cool. Neat.
The Weather Child by Philippa Ballantine. It's an alternate history fantasy set in New Zealand.
Oh, cool.
And it features symbiotes who
Yeah.
give their human hosts powers to affect the weather
Fun.
and other
Okay.
things. But I've never thought of magic being a symbiote.
Well, is it similar, do you think, in concept to like my Louis and Delaney series?
I don't know. I haven't read it to know exactly what it is, in that particular book.
Mm-hmm. You've read some of it.
Oh, I read Louis and Delaney. I
Yeah,
know
yeah.
what you're talking about, Louis
Oh,
and
but
Delaney.
you mean
I don't
in
know
that
if
one.
this
Okay.
Weather Child, the symbiotes in that are similar to what yours are. Not that yours are symbiotes exactly.
I don't know. They might benefit each other. It's kind of
maybe.
interesting. Yeah, I'd be curious to read that one too.
But yeah, the whole concept of merging with something else to create a magical effect
Right.
would be interesting in any book. And there's so many different ways you can do that. And then blood magic,
Right.
is it required to cast a spell? Like you have to have blood, or is it a component of the spell?
Right.
Is it a sacrifice that, the dripping of the blood is important some other way, or do
Right.
you have to consume it?
Yeah.
Gross.
Gross. I mean, well, think about vampires. There is a
Oh
whole
yeah. And
there's
they
a
don't
whole
think it's
line of
gross.
no,
They
they
like
don't.
it.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are definitely things that you can do with blood, and vampires is obviously a trope that is well versed, well explored.
Documented, explored is
Explored.
better.
Yeah, explored is the word that I was looking
Yeah,
for.
documented's not right.
No, but there no, but there's a lot that you can do with blood magic, especially because vampires do exist, but
Mhm,
also, other ways that you can use it. Does a rune have to be drawn in blood? Because it
mhm.
symbolizes, the effort that you put into casting a spell or something.
Or does your blood actually have the magic in it? So you cut yourself and you fling your blood on your enemy and it makes them
Right.
sizzle or whatever.
Yeah.
Or, it's the blood that creates the catalyst to do whatever the magic is. Do you have to put your blood on this rock to make it rise up and throw at the bad guys?
Right.
I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Bone magic is another one.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
you
Along the same kind of lines.
yeah, do you have to use bones of animals? Do they have to be like stripped of the skin, like old bones, or are they new bones, or
Well,
are
that
they bones that are still in somebody that you can,
that's interesting, and it provides a lot of interesting ideas that are probably not in the best interest of my characters. So
as
we'll
we all
see.
do all the time.
Right, right.
Mirror magic. I think mirrors are cool.
Yeah.
I love
Mirrors are very
mirrors.
cool.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And Karen Monning in her books, she has the silvers, which are
Mm,
mirrors that are actual portals.
yeah. Well, and then Cresley Cole has a witch named Mary Ketta, I think,
Oh
who
yeah.
uses mirrors for her magic, and
I
they just
forgot about that one.
yeah, I think that's book 3. I want to say book 3. It's
I
Mary
gotta
Ketta and
reread all
Bowen.
of them. I've got to
Yeah.
reread all of
And
them.
that's the Immortals After Dark series for anybody who's interested in what we're talking about. But yeah, she
Go
also
read
uses
them.
they're good. But yeah, she uses mirrors for her magic. She's known
Hmm.
as like the mirror witch or whatever.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I've more recently read Karen Monning's The Silvers,
Yeah. Right.
stepping through the silvers and all the chaos that comes from that. But
Yeah.
death magic, like in
Yes.
Mercy, I know that some of the witches use death to cast spells. Not their white witches, they don't do that.
Right. Right. Well, and I don't necessarily think it's death per se, but pain. They use pain
That's true.
to feed off of that energy of suffering, and then the death that comes after does, I think, provide a boost in power as well. But they also like, because I remember one of the books,
I do too. I know exactly what you're talking about.
I remember one of the books where they find a creature that's still alive and they think it's dead because it's been like skinned. It's horrible. It's the horrible
Ugh.
imagery. But the witch that had done this to this creature, it was like a raccoon or something,
Mhm.
was like feeding off of the pain that this raccoon was giving her for power. And then the main characters killed it for mercy, for
Yeah, to
in
put it out of
mercy.
its misery.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was horrifying.
Yeah.
Patricia Briggs is amazing.
Right. Yeah.
Um, you could use magic through glamour. I
Yeah. I mean, think
love
about
the
the Fae.
concept of
Yeah.
glamour. Yeah. Definitely some good ways to put that into your books.
Definitely. Yeah, glamour, illusions,
Hmm.
what items can be used to enhance those abilities, or even just have like the creatures have those abilities themselves. Like Mac in my book of illusions, she just can cast illusions, and that's because
Hmm.
of her bloodline.
Hmm.
And so, maybe the magic is in her blood. I don't know, but I mean, I know, but
But the reader doesn't know yet.
right, but the reader wouldn't know, and that just is part of the magical system is where does this magic come from, or how can it be used, and what other ways can we use to get magic across in our
Mm-hmm.
novel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely some really good examples of different ways. I can English, I promise.
I can English.
Of ways to bring magic into your novels. I think it's really important to take a step back and think about what your story needs, because like you and I sat here and talked about really cool ways that we could use music magic, and
Mm-hmm.
we can go off on so many ideas that we have, but what does your actual story itself need?
Yeah, what does that do for your story? If it doesn't do anything, that's not what you need to use. Yeah.
Right, or save it for something else.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great idea. Come up with a different story to use that in, if that's what you want, if it doesn't work with what you're trying to get across.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think the most important thing is to, follow the rules that you've set in place for your novel. So if you come up with the magical system and you set rules in place, follow them throughout your series. Are items important? We talked a little bit about items. Why are they important? How can they be used in your novel to make them a part of the plot and a necessary element of your magical system? My first thought was, if you have staves as an important item for using magic, like you need those to cast a spell, does the type of material of the staff matter? If it's a plastic staff, does it have as much power as one made from an oak tree?
See, and you could use a whole lot of depth in your novel. You can have class systems where poor people can only afford the plastic ones, and so they get a certain amount of magic, but they can't access the more elaborate magic, and yet the rich people, they can do one in platinum, and so their magic, so that is an interesting thought as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And does the length of the staff have any bearing on the magic? Do shorter ones have less amount of power?
Because size matters.
As I was typing up those notes, I was like, there's going to be some kind of joke there. And lo and behold, my mother delivered.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, but honestly though, do they have embedded gemstones or carved symbols in the wood or the plastic or what have you to help with, either the amount of power or the way that you get a spell across or whatever?
I kind of like the idea of runes as, I mean, what was the Immortal Instruments where they had runes on their body?
I didn't read that one, so I'm not sure. And I didn't watch the movie.
Yeah. But I like the idea of runes as being a way to cast magic. That
I do too.
You have to learn what those runes are. And so that's a limitation in and of itself. If you don't have access to learning, or maybe there's secret grimoires that only certain families have or whatever.
Right.
And, but the runes, I like that idea. I might have to do something with that.
Definitely. I've always wanted to write a rune book, but I have not come up with a concept that is super appealing to me yet. So I'll have to see if I ever come up with something. But that's all that I had. That's
me too. We'll do more magical world building stuff. There is so much more.
Yeah.
I would come across an article that would say, the 10 things you need for a magical system. We could do an episode on each of those individual things. That's how much is out there.
I would love to do that.
Yeah. So we'll come back to this topic again. But that's all I've got to.
Awesome. I do have an interview question for you.
Okay.
Are the magical systems in your novels mostly hard magic, or have you noticed if there's soft magic as well?
The Theron story I was telling you about is definitely hard magic.
Yeah.
My first book is hard magic.
Yeah.
I don't know really with my frickin' fairies. She's not magical at all.
Right.
But there is the magical world around her. But we as the reader learn as she learns. So
that's true.
Is that low magic because we don't know the rules?
I would say, I would say that that's a low soft magic, because things can just come out of the gate and we as the reader have no idea what's going to happen next.
She has no idea that vampires are only allowed to do certain things, or so for her it isn't known. and there are no strict rules as far as I mean, there probably are strict rules, but our perspective doesn't know them yet.
Right. Right.
So I'm trying to think what else.
Interesting.
Kata,
Kata. Same kind of
she's a witch,
idea.
but
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't have her casting magic. Well, her mom is a witch.
Her
We
mom
don't.
is a witch. She works in a witch shop
Yeah,
and she gets transported to a world
to
that is
another
not
world
ours.
that
Yeah.
has magic
Yeah.
that she also doesn't know. So
Yeah.
it's got components of each. What about yours?
I think all of them are hard
I
magic.
think they might be too.
Yeah. And which leads me to wonder, like, is it easier to write hard magic or is it easier to write soft magic? Or do I just enjoy writing hard magic?
I don't know.
Because I'm pretty sure every single one of mine have very concrete magical systems that I've come up
Mm-hmm.
with
Mm-hmm.
that have their own rules. And it's not to say that they're easy per se. You know, one of them is very wild magic that kind of does what it wants, but in a
Oh, speaking
systematic
of
way.
wild magic, Kata's world, the
Oh,
world she
that's
goes
right.
to has wild magic. And it's
Yeah.
actually called wild magic.
Yeah. Huh.
Huh.
Yeah, the one that I'm thinking of mine, they actually have, you know, departments in universities
Oh yeah.
dedicated to studying it. So there's some quote unquote rhyme or reason to the magic, but there's also not, which is why there are these departments dedicated to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still a hard magic system, but magic is somewhat unpredictable.
Mm-hmm.
So
Hmm.
yeah, I think all of them are hard magic.
Okay.
I do have a sentence challenge for those of you who are interested in participating in those. We would also love to, you know, see what you guys do with these sentences. At some point, we'll probably read them on mini episodes or something. We'll figure something out to do with them.
Definitely.
Because we've gotten some good ones and they're a lot of fun to read from our end, and I love doing them myself. So this sentence you can use anywhere in a piece of work. I typically start a new work and write about a page to give myself some limitations on using these and challenge myself and get across some skills that I'm trying to work on. So this sentence this week is the ruby glowed with power.
Ooh, that's a good one. That makes me think that's a whole another form of magic. That what if you had to hold a particular crystal? You know, okay, I've got quartz and it can do certain spells, but
Yeah.
a ruby, you know, and which
Yeah.
are much rarer.
Yeah.
You know, how do you get a ruby?
Right. Right.
And it casts this kind of spell, or you know,
Go write a book.
yeah, yeah, I like it.
Yeah. All right. You ready for me to outro?
Yes, ma'am.
All righty. Thank you guys so much for listening. We appreciate all of you. And, you know, we're always thrilled to discuss writing. Obviously, we talk for ages.
Hours, yeah.
Yeah. Come check out our website at eatdrinkwritepodcast.com. You can find all of our social media there. So Twitter, Facebook, Insta, Pinterest. Come and follow us on all of those. We love seeing all of your comments. We would love to interact with you guys. And you can also get in touch with us via our email. It's arguably the best way to get in touch with us. But we do see most of y'all's comments. I love reading the YouTube comments. Those are some of my favorite. But so our email is eat.drink.write.podcast@gmail.com. So we would love to hear from you guys. Any suggestions that you have for episodes?
Yeah, that's how Nicole told us what she wanted us to talk about.
Yeah, definitely. So we would love to hear more of those. Absolutely. So also, if you guys would like to support us as we continue on our podcasting journey, check out our Patreon at patreon.com/EDW podcast. We're super grateful to the patrons that we already have. Thank you guys so much for your support. It helps us to keep doing these episodes.
Couldn't do it without you. Yeah, honestly.
No, it's fantastic. We love our fan base and we love our listeners, and it's pretty awesome.
Yes.
So, but that's all.
All right. And we will see you next week.
Yeah, see you next week.